Namaste, Kublai. 26 June 1975. India woke up to a shocking announcement on the All India radio. A state of emergency has been declared in the entire country. And what followed this declaration was a sordid saga observation of the laws of the land and an extension of the ruthless dictator-like power over the people of India. But before I speak about how we, the people of India, were oppressed by the very people whom we had elected to protect us, let us examine the conditions under which the emergency was declared. The Indira Gandhi-led government was misusing its absolute majority in both houses of the parliament to pass radical laws that undermined the very fundamentals of the constitution. Within the Congress, Indira Gandhi sidelined her rivals, forcing the party to split in 1969 into the Congress O and the Congress R. In Gandhi Congress R, remember, quickly realized that their progress within the rank depend solely on their loyalty to the Gandhi and her family. And from there on, the family worship became common in Congress, something that we see even today. This authoritarian rise of Indira Gandhi, together with the near-radical leftward tone of her government and her meddling with fundamental rights of the people, led to the expected resistance and protests in the country, particularly student agitation in Bihar and the Nav Nirban movement in Gujarat rattled Gandhi. But more than the protests was the question of the validity of Indira Gandhi election as the PM of India itself. You see, in 1971, a politician, Raj Narayan, filed a case in Allahabad High Court that shocked India. Raj Narayan has been defeated in the 1971 parliamentary election by Indira Gandhi, and he filed a case of election fraud and use of state machinery for election against her. Allahabad High Court found Indira Gandhi guilty and declared her election null and void and unseated her from her seat in the Lok Sabha. Indira Gandhi challenged Allahabad High Court's decision in the Supreme Court. Justice B.R. Krishna Laya on 24 June 1975 upheld the High Court judgment and ordered all privilege that Gandhi received as an MP to be stopped and that she be debarred from voting. The very next day, Indira Gandhi declared emergency to overrule the powers of the courts. Now, friends, imagine system where the government arrests you for protesting. You are denied bail. You are both tortured, both mentally and physically, for speaking against the government. I ask you to imagine this because that is exactly what the Congress government did in 1975. They termed protests against the government as internal disturbance and declared an emergency so that they could struggle the voice of the people and to do so as they please. A government employee, an MLA, an MP, a ministers, and even the Prime Minister is the government servant. But service to the people was too much to expect from the Congress. Indira Gandhi did not want to be a servant. She wanted to be a master and she wanted the people to serve her. That was the mindset that led to the declaration of emergency on that fateful day in 1975. Now let us talk about what happened during the emergency and how it is relevant even today. First, invoking Article 352 of the Indian Constitution, Indira Gandhi granted herself extraordinary powers and launched a massive crackdown on civil liberties and political opposition. The government used police force across the country to place thousands of protesters and strike leaders under preventive detention. Political leaders like Jaya Prakash Narayan, Raj Narayan, Morarji Desai, Sharan Singh, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Lal Krishna Advani, Arun Jaitley, and other protesters leaders were immediately arrested. Even Congress leader who dissented against the emergency declared and amended to the constitution, such as Mohan Dharia and Chandrasekhar, were made to resign from the government and party positions and were thereafter arrested and placed under the detention. Detention of the people by police without charge or notification of families, and abuse and torture of all detainees and political prisoners is one of the highlights of the emergency and the real Congress mentality. One example is of a man called Rajan. He was a student of the Calicut Regional Engineering College, was arrested by the Kerala police on 1st March 1976 along with his fellow student Joseph Shelley for alleged Naxal association. As was later revealed by the petition in the High Court of Kerala, Rajan was held in police custody and tortured as a part of interrogation. He died from torture and extreme kind, shock Pinchitong. His body was then disposed of by the police and was never recovered. Ranjan's mother became mentally unstable from the developments and was hospitalized. His father lost all of his money, but he did not know why his son was arrested. Joseph Shelley suffered imprisonment for 9 months. It was a common practice to arrest people on fake charge and fake case. And we in the Northeast were not spared either. Professor Martin Majau, who was then the sitting MLA of the newly formed Meghalaya, was arrested and placed under the maintenance of Internal Security Acts, that is MISA. Apart from Majau, others were also booked under the draconian law. Majau was arrested few days after the emergency was imposed and was in jail for about 13 months. He could not even see his mother in her final moment as she expired 1 day before he came out of jail. I'm sure that Robert Karsien, ex-MP, will recall this drastic time. In an interview to the Telegraph, Reverend PBM Basayomoy, consultants to the Northeast Dialogue Forum, NEDF, recall how Bas Bor dan the diktat, talk less, walk more during the emergency. The emergency was a time when Indira Gandhi enslaved the people of India once more after independence. Things were no different in the other states of the Northeast too. Leaders and representatives were arrested and left, right and center. People were scared to say or do anything against the government. The government machinery was directed to be merciless against all such people. People were, you could not just not say no. The fear in the mind of the people can be best explained in Shri L.K. Adwaji words. When you were asked only to bend, you crowd. Habapha epi bandem, pishupar dapar. Another highlight of the emergency was a gang on a private media. And the use of public and private media institutions like national television network Doordarshan for government propaganda. Within 3 hours of declaring emergency, the electricity to all major newspapers was cut so they could not criticize this move of the government. The Gandhi government laid some rules for the journalists across the country and they were told about guidelines to follow. All the newspapers in the country were asked to take permission before publishing anything by the press advisor. Films that show the truth about the emergency were banned, and their prints were burned. Books were banned too. Even Congress own Shashi Tharoor described the emergency as 22 months in the life of a dog. In a play that he has written, Gandhi said the emergency was required to uplift the economic condition of India. She also gave the infamous slogan of Garibi Hatao. This slogan that Congress continue to use even today, 45 years later. But the emergency was marked by the destruction of the slum and low-income housing in the Tukman Gate and Jama Masjid area of Old Delhi. Garib Hatao, in fact, became Garib Ko Hato for Congress. Hagacaka ban penduk no ia kecingduk, kalalong penban penduk ia kibeduk. Another important point that I want to touch upon in the infamous 42 Amendment of the Constitution of India. The emergency was dotted with a large-scale and illegal enactment of a new law, including modification to the Constitution. During the emergency, many fundamental rights of the people of India that were guaranteed by the Constitution were stripped, including the right of freedom and the right to freedom of expression, among others. But to add insult to injury, Gandhi introduced the 42 Amendment of the Constitution. This amendment reduced the power of the Supreme Court and High Courts and gave more power to the ministers, and thus disturbed the carefully crafted system of constitutional check and balance between the three organs of the government. Section 55 of the amendment prevented the court to question the constitutional validity of laws. This amendment brought about the most widespread changes to the Constitution in its history. In fact, this amendment tried to insert the Constitution of Indira within the Constitution of India. And if all inhuman acts of the Congress were not enough, in September 1976, Sanjay Gandhi initiated a widespread compulsory sterilization program to limit population growth. Quotas were set up that enthusiastic supporters and government officials worked hard to achieve. In 1976, the program led to 8.3 million sterilization, most of them forced up from 2.7 million the previous year. I will share with you some example of this forceful action of the government. Shahu Khaleki, a patient from Barsi in Maharashtra, was taken for sterilization after mentioning that he was already sterilized. He was bitten. A sterilization procedure was undertaken on him for a second time. Hawa Singh, a young widower from Pipli, was taken from the bus. Again, this will sterilize. The ensuing infection took his life. Harijan, a 70-year-old with no teeth and a bad eyesight, was sterilized forcefully. In Muzaffarnagar, Uttar Pradesh, on 18 October 1976, police picked up 17 people, of which 2 were over 75 and 2 under 18. Hundreds of people surrounded the police station demanding they free captive. The police refused to release them and used tear gas shell. The crowd retaliated by throwing stones to control the situation. The police fired on the crowd. 30 people died as a result. In short, human rights were reserved for those people who agreed to bootlicking Indira Gandhi and her government. And many in the Congress wanted the emergency to continue for several more years. However, And thankfully, in the 1977 Lok Sabha election held in March, Indira Gandhi and Sanjay Gandhi both lost their Lok Sabha seat, as did all the Congress candidates in the northern states such as Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. The Janata Party 298 seat and its allies 47 seat gave it a massive majority, and Morarji Desai became the first non-Congress Prime Minister of India. Friends, 1975 was not the one of event, but such dictatorship is in the DNA of the Congress. It was this same mentality with which the Congress introduced the communal violence bill during the UPA. The idea was to use force to subjugate people. The freedom that we enjoy today is because of the people who are in the government today. Who fought for this freedom from Congress? Dictatorship during the emergency. The root of the BJP can be also found in the struggle against the oppressing emergency. The Congress has not changed. It still misuses power at the first opportunity. We will fight for the right of the Indians every time the Congress and its allies try to mislead us. Thank you. Jai Hind, Kublai Mathila.